This video is a full walkthrough of the Sunday Keys iPad app. Sunday Keys is an all-in-one tool that gives you all of the sounds, features, and workflows you need to nail live key sounds at your church without any other software and using any MIDI controller. In this video, I'm going to break down the features step by step and explain what makes it such a powerful tool for churches. Let's get it started. All the audio you're going to hear in today's video is coming straight from the Sunday Keys app with no post-processing applied. If you have questions about how to get things connected or which iPads work well for the app, we'll put a link in the description with all that information for you. So let's talk through the various components of the main screen inside of Sunday Keys. To start, the set list is the top left corner of the screen. Your set list contains patches, and patches are what generate all of the sounds that you use when you're playing at church. So I have 4 patches in this set list, and as I tap these different patch names, you can see that there are different sounds available to me in these 5 modules on screen. So this first patch is called Grand Beyond Measure. It has a grand piano, a few pads, a lead sound, and a synth bass. So this could represent the first song in my set list. I might want to use this patch for the first song. And then for the second song, maybe I'd switch to the second patch. And notice that when I select the next patch, there's no gap in the audio. There's a seamless transition, and I'm able to immediately use that next patch. So you'll use Setlist to stay organized and prepare for your live performances at church. You can use one patch for the entire setlist, or you can use multiple patches to be able to move through different songs that you're going to play. Each patch can include up to 5 sounds. And we can look at this Any More Lush EPs patch and see that we actually have the opportunity to add a sound to this 5th section if we'd like. We'll talk about adding sounds and building patches from scratch a little bit later in this video. But for now, know that you're not locked in to the sounds that are in these patches. You can customize them as much as you'd like so that they do exactly what you need. Now, when you're inside of a patch, you can view the sounds that are available, and you can also adjust those during preparation or on the fly during live performance. Each sound has a volume fader, so you can find just the right mix for each sound. There are various audio effects, and you can tap any effect to view more parameters. You can turn effects on and off. You can do this in real time if you'd like. So for example, let me highlight this piano sound. Here's the grand piano. I can bring in some delay. And I can introduce this octave effect. So you can shape your sounds during preparation with the audio and MIDI effects, and you can also take control of your live performances by turning on effects at any time while you're on stage. Now, like I said, you're not locked into the sounds that are included in these patches. You can design patches from scratch, and you can also modify any of the existing patches that you'd like. You can swap out sounds entirely, or you can actually just replace the audio effects. So I'm going to replace this chorus effect with a flanger. And I can turn that effect on and hear how it sounds. I can open up this effect and tap on presets to view some really cool effect presets that are included in the app. Let's load up this one and apply it and hear how it changes the piano sound. So exploring the presets and effects inside of the Sunday Keys app is a great way to be inspired and find things that you maybe wouldn't have done otherwise. The bottom portion of the screen is devoted to the on-screen keyboard, and you'll notice color-coded layers floating over the top of that keyboard. Those colored bars represent each of the 5 sounds in your patch. So this orange bar represents the piano, green is the altar call pad, etc. So these bars represent the range on the keyboard where a given sound is available to play. So for example, right now, I've got the trance lead only available in the right hand, that's this purple bar, and I have the synth bass, this pink bar, only available in the left hand. Being able to layer and split your sounds is a powerful tool for live performance to make sure that you're not muddying things up and every sound is placed exactly where you want it. Again, you're not locked into the default layer ranges. You can tap the layer editor drag and drop as you'd like. You can also select the low or high note and then tap the new note that you'd like to set for that range. So again, being able to adjust these layer ranges is a really powerful tool for you to make sure everything sounds and feels just right when you're performing. To the left of the on-screen keyboard, we also have this mod wheel. Now you can use the on-screen mod wheel if you'd like, or you can map it to a physical mod wheel. You'll find that the mod wheel can control the brightness of pads and other synth sounds inside of the app. So when the mod wheel is down, sounds will be a little bit more subdued and not have as much high energy, high frequency content. Then as you move the mod wheel up, the sounds will get brighter and take up more high frequency space. You can use the mod wheel during your live performances to build dynamically at just the right moment, filling that extra high-end space when you need to take things to the next level. You can actually adjust the behavior of the mod wheel as well. We'll talk about how to do that later on in this video. Now, as I explained, you'll organize your patches into a set list, and your patches contain all of the sounds that you'd like to use to perform live. You can adjust all of the sounds, their volumes, their effect levels in real time as you'd like. So if I wanted to make this pad louder, I could just bring it up. Or if I wanted to take the synth bass out, I could take it down. And you can do all of that in preparation or during performance in real time if you'd like. But sometimes you might also want to make a lot of changes very quickly, maybe in a moment of transition from a down verse to a big chorus. Rather than having to quickly move 5 faders into new positions and select a bunch of different effects, you can use patch snapshots to do all of those changes automatically at the touch of a button. The snapshots area is displayed right here, and every patch has one default snapshot, which defines the starting position of that patch. And you can set that to be whatever you'd like. But you can also set up to 4 other unique snapshots to help you quickly move through transitional moments of your patch. So right now I'm on the default snapshot, and I'm going to save this so the next time I load this patch, it's going to start in this position. Let's say as the song builds, I know I want to introduce some more intensity. So I'm going to select Snapshot 2 and then bring up the volume of this synth bass, of the trance lead. I'm going to bring up the mod wheel a bit. And let's also add back in that octave up and delay effect that I talked about. So this is how the patch sounds at this more intense setting. Once you've got your snapshot dialed in, just hit the save icon here, and now we can go back and forth between these settings with just the touch of a button. Now, we can also rename these snapshots to make it really easy to remember what they are. So we could just name this Big Chorus and save it. And we'll also rename this default chorus to Verse. So as you're preparing, you can set up these snapshots, and then when you're on stage in the moment, you don't have to think about what you're doing. You can just recall the snapshots that you programmed during your preparation. Now let's say that we've got a third snapshot here. This is called, we'll just name it Bridge. So now we have 3 snapshots available, each with unique positions for volumes, effects, and the mod wheel. But let's say that the worship leader decides they want to start the song off with the bridge. It's really easy for you to do that. You don't have to just jump to that snapshot. We can long press, tap Rearrange, and then just place the bridge snapshot in the first position. So now the next time we select this patch, we're going to be right where we want to be. Snapshots are one of the most powerful features in Sunday Keys that makes it easy to execute on what you've prepared during your live performances without sacrificing flexibility. Let's keep working our way through the main screen of the app. In the left middle section here, we have the Tonic Pad Player. This is a much loved feature in Sunday Keys that provides an ambient pad in the key of your choice that sits underneath everything else and glues together the sound of your band. To turn Tonic on, just turn the power button on. And now we have this awesome ambient pad in the key of C, gluing everything together and just filling a little bit of space. Now we can play over the top of this. We can control the volume of Tonic. And if we select a new key, there's a seamless crossfade between the two. We can make it brighter or darker. And we can also add a little bit of shimmer. Tap here to view extended features available to the Tonic Pad Player. There are actually 12 different pad presets available, so you can dial in the perfect pad sound for the songs you're playing. Let's choose this guitar preset and hear how it sounds. The evolving preset is one of my absolute favorites. Let's bring this to the key of D. Tonic is always available in your set list, which means it continues to play as you change through patches. This is an awesome way to smooth over transitions between patches and songs that you're playing at church. Sometimes you might also want to select specific settings when you choose a patch in your set list. This is easy to do as well. Just dial in the settings you want for Tonic in a specific patch and then tap Patch Lock. Now the next time you select this patch, these settings will be automatically and seamlessly recalled with a smooth crossfade between. So we could set different patch lock settings for this patch. Let's say we want Tonic off for this patch. We'll patch lock that. For this one, let's say we do want Tonic on, but we want to use the organ preset. And we're going to be in the key of A. We want it a little bit more subtle, so we're going to turn the volume down. And then for this first patch in our set list, maybe we're not sure where we're going to start. We might just need to flow. We're going to be in the key of D. We'll turn Tonic on. Play for a second. And then we're ready to move into the next song in our set list. So we choose this Breath of Praise patch. Tonic will smoothly fade to the new Tonic preset and to the key of A. Then we can move on to our next patch. Tonic's going to fade out, select the key of D and the evolving preset, but it's ready for us whenever we want to bring it back in. And then we can move to our final patch. And we're ready to go. And then of course, anytime you turn the Tonic Pad Player off, it smoothly fades out over time. The Tonic Pad Player is an incredible tool to help glue together the sound of your band and the key sounds that you're playing. You have total flexibility and control over how much space the Tonic Pad fills, thanks to the brightness and shimmer controls and the variety of presets available to the Tonic Pad Player. A couple things left to talk about in the main screen of the app. Each patch has adjustable play in and hear in transpose. That means you can adjust the key that you're going to be playing in and the key that you're going to be hearing in independently. So if you've practiced a song in a specific key and you're asked at the very last minute to play it in a different key, you can play it in the key that you learned it in, but have the audio output in the newly designated key. And that works vice versa as well. And the amazing thing is, all of the specific MIDI programming that you might do to program chords or sequences in the app automatically responds anytime you adjust this transposition. So you don't have to redo all of the work anytime you're asked to transpose. The app is smart enough to just do all of that for you. Next to that, we have tempo. Tapping on tempo opens up tap tempo, which is an easy way to take control of the tempo in real time if you're not playing to a click or maybe you get off of it, but you want to stay locked in. You can also adjust in steps here to dial in a specific tempo on the fly. Those are real-time ways to control the tempo, but you can also pre-designate the tempo of a specific patch. Most of the time in church context, we know which songs we're going to be playing, and roughly at what tempo. So if you want to, you can have the patch automatically jump to a specific tempo inside of Patch Settings, choose Patch Tempo, and you can tap it in here, or you can type in the specific tempo, nice and easy. Now the next time you select this patch, the tempo will automatically jump to 70 BPM. Next to that, you have a quick MIDI panic button, so in case a key on your keyboard ever gets stuck, you can just tap panic. That resets the MIDI and audio engine so that note doesn't hang. And then lastly, we have a master volume control that allows you to adjust the overall volume of your key's audio. So far for this walkthrough video, we've been using the Starter Patches set list. This comes when you download Sunday Keys and just includes a few patches, enough to give you an idea of what's possible. But you'll start to realize the real power once you build set lists for yourself. So now what I'd like to do is create a new set list and walk you through the workflows of adding patches, creating sounds, and dialing things in for a live service at church. To do that, we just hit this arrow next to the set list name. And we can tap Create New Set List here if we'd like to create a new one. And you can also browse your recent set lists and view all of your set lists here. If you've got tons of set lists, you can search for a set list by name. And you can also filter them and order them by date, recently used, how many patches they include, etc. So if you've got lots of set lists available to you, the app helps you stay organized and find just the one you're looking for. Now we're going to create a new set list. You can do this in two ways. You can start with a completely blank set list from scratch, or you can create a set list from a template. So if you wanted to have a few patches ready to go, you could choose Starter Patches, or if you wanted just piano and pads, you could choose this one. We're going to go with a set list from scratch. I'm just going to name this Weekend Service and then hit Create. Now we have a completely blank set list and we can add patches as we'd like. There's two ways to do this. We can create a new patch from scratch and add all of the sounds one at a time, or we can browse to find an existing patch that has some sounds ready to go. Let's start off by adding a patch from the library. To do that, we hit the plus icon here and choose Add a Patch from the library. Sunday Keys includes some ready-to-play patches that you can use as they are, or you can modify and use as starting points for the patches that you'd like to use. We can tap View All Patches and view some of these ready-to-play patches. So let's load in Who Can Stop It and tap Add Patch. Now we can see we have Who Can Stop It in our set list as the first patch. This is what it sounds like. If you like the way a patch sounds, you can leave it in your set list and use it as is, or you could rename it if you wanted to designate it for a specific song in your set list. Or if it's close but not exactly what you'd like it to be, you could swap out any of these sounds with a different one from the library. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's say we want to take this felt piano sequence, which sounds like this, and swap it out with something else. How about a nice arpeggiated sound? So we just tap the sound name, and now we are in the sound browser. This is where you can view all of the individual sounds that are included in Sunday Keys. And there are really great options, all designed for modern worship music. So we could view the list of all sounds if we'd like, but that can be pretty overwhelming, especially if you're not quite sure what you're looking for. But you don't have to audition every sound in the list. Instead, you can filter down to help you find just what you want. So we know that we're looking for an ARP. So let's go to ARPs and Sequences. And here we can view sounds of that specific category that are available in the app. Let's load in Simple Worship ARP and hit Replace Sound. Now in Module 3, I have the Simple Worship ARP available, so we can check out how that sounds. I'm going to bring the tempo down a little bit. We're going to play like a slow song. There we go. And the mod wheel controls the brightness of this ARP. That's pretty cool. If I wanted to, I could open up the arpeggiator and adjust the pattern for this ARP, or I could even bring the subdivision down. Let's say I want it to happen with an 8th note subdivision. And I can adjust the velocity of any of these steps. I could change the note order, down, up and down. So you can really get specific and dial in a great arpeggiator pattern if you've got something specific in mind. There's also some presets that you can try if you want to find some quick inspiration. But I'm going to stick with this default arpeggiator pattern. I will say that I'd like to tweak the tone of this instrument a little bit, and I can do this inside of the Sound Settings menu. This is the icon in the top right corner for each sound. Tapping it reveals extended parameters that really let you dial in the exact character of the sound. We can adjust the ADSR, so if we want it to fade in a little bit more, we could bring the attack back. Here in the Mod Filter tab is where we can adjust how much the mod wheel adjusts the brightness of the sound. So if we wanted it to actually get a lot darker at that low position, we'll bring the minimum value down. Hear how dark that got. Then we could also make the sound get very bright as the mod wheel goes up. Or if we don't want it to be adjusted by the mod wheel at all, we can just set both values to the same value, and now the mod wheel will have no effect on the sound. We also have a compressor available if you want to squash the sound or make sure that it sits right in the mix, and then a full EQ as well. So let's say I want the sound to be really thin. I could take out all the low end here. I actually really like that because it's going to leave space in this layered patch for the other instruments. Nice. So that's sounding really good to me. The last thing I'm going to do is take the Simple Worship Arp out of the low end. So I'm going to bring the layer range up here to about middle C. Now it's going to be available to me in my right hand, but those left hand bass notes aren't going to trigger the arp. Nice. So now we've taken an existing patch from the library, modified it a bit so it nails the song that we're going to be playing. We could add some more snapshots and get more specific if we wanted to, but it doesn't take very long to dial in patches that do what you need them to do. You have all sorts of powerful tools, the ability to adjust audio, MIDI effects, EQ, compression, ADSR for every sound. But if that's overwhelming to you, you'll find that a lot of the layered patches that are already available in the app are pretty dialed in for modern worship music in a general sense. So if you just need to quickly find patches, you're going to find tons of stuff that's ready to play without you needing to get into the sound design at all. You'll find that Sunday Keys keeps things simple when you need them to be, but also gives you powerful, in-depth control when you're trying to do something really specific. Now that we've modified an existing patch from the library, let's build a brand new patch sound by sound for a specific purpose. We're going to hit the plus icon in the set list again, and this time choose Create a New Patch and give it a name, like Name, and hit Save. Now we have a new blank patch where all 5 sound modules are empty. This is a blank canvas where you can create just the patch you're looking for a specific song, a moment of a service, or even create a patch versatile enough to cover an entire performance. Let's start off by adding a sound to Module 1. Now we are again in the sound browser, and we can browse by sound. Let's bring in a string sound to start. I really love this string ensemble swell sound. Here's how that sounds. If we wanted to replace it with another one, we just tap the name, go back into the browser, and we could swap it out for something like this ambient organ. This is sort of more of a pad, really. Yeah, that's feeling nice. So I'm going to bring the volume down a little bit. Let's add a sound to Module 2. Let's go to pianos, acoustic pianos, and I'm going to bring in the Church Grand. This is a really nice, sort of roomy, grand piano sound with lots of character. Then we can adjust the balance of these 2 sounds. I like this piano sound, but I want it to take up more space, so I can tap on the Pure Verb effect and change the size and character of the reverb. So right now the reverb size is set to large hall, but let's switch it out for cathedral. This is a really huge reverb sound. You can hear that nice big tail on the piano. We could adjust the high cut, make it a little bit darker, cut some of the lows. And we could also add some modulation to only the reverb signal if we wanted to make it sound even spacier. So let's do a little bit of that. So we've got these two layers. Let's go ahead and add in a bass. Fill some low end. I'm going to put this in module 3, select the sub bass. Here's how that sounds. How about something rhythmic? Let's go back into ARPs and sequences. And I'm going to bring in this sound called sub sequence. Now this has a sequencer MIDI effect on it. And we open up the sequencer, we can view the programming that's already in place. And this is designating that the bass notes between C1 and B1 are going to play rhythmic sequences back. Let me isolate the sound so you can hear what I'm talking about. This is how the sequencers work inside of Sunday Keys. So the sequencer is locked to the tempo that's set within the app. The clock starts when I play the first note. So as long as I play in time with the rest of the band, the sequence is going to stay locked in. And it's also sort of locked to the specific key because the sequencer has programming in the key of C. But if we wanted to adjust that, we could. Let's say that we actually wanted to do a song in G. We'd tap play in and choose G. And then we also want to hear it in G. Now if we open the sequencer back up, we can see that all of that MIDI sequencing has automatically been transposed, and now we can play the sequence in the key of G instead. And you can adjust and create custom sequences of your own however you'd like. And of course, there's a big library of presets available for you to try as well. Let's confirm this and then go back to the original key of C for now. Let's add one more sound to round out this layered patch. I think I'm going to bring in a digital piano. This DXE Piano 1 is a classic electric piano sound that I absolutely love to layer with an acoustic grand piano. Let's hear the results of this ready-to-play layered patch. Creating your own patches in the Sunday Keys app doesn't feel like a chore. Instead, it feels like exploring and finding inspiration and creativity in places you might not have looked otherwise. If you know exactly what you want to do, you can do it in just a couple of taps. Or if you want to take your time and bring something new to your band, it's easy to browse and be inspired by what you find. And of course, you're never locked in. You always have the flexibility to make adjustments, even during live performances, if you find that something needs to be tweaked. So now we've got two patches in this weekend service set list. Let's say that we actually needed to play a different service, maybe midweek. We're going to use the starter patches set list for that. So in the Setlist browser, we just choose starter patches and hit load. And now we're right here with this selection of patches available to us. Then when we get to weekend worship, we can go back to the Setlist browser, choose weekend service, load that set list, and it's exactly as we left it, ready to hit the stage. Now, when you create or modify a patch that you really like, you're not limited to just using it in that set list. There's a full user library for both patches and individual sounds. So if you create or customize something and you'd like to be able to use it again in any other set list, it's very easy to do so. Let me show you how to do that. It only takes a second. Let's export this patch to the user library. And you can also add folders to keep your user library organized. I've got a folder here for song patches. I could also create a new one and just name this General. maybe just patches that are useful in a general sense for any worship song. Now I can select that folder and save this patch to it. Now this patch is saved to my user library, and I can easily bring it into any set list that I'd like in the future. We can also do this if you customize a sound and you'd like to save those specific settings so you could use them in a different patch. So let's say that I've made some changes to the subsequence that I really like. I can hit the settings cog and choose Export to Library. And now I can create the same folders for categorization if I'd like here, or I can just save it to the top level. And then anytime I'd like to use that sound in any other patch, I can pull it right back in. It's really simple to stay organized and to keep track of everything you've created inside of the Sunday Keys app. Now let's talk about how you can control the Sunday Keys app during your live performances. You can connect any MIDI keyboard to use as your primary controller within the app. You'll be able to use the sustain pedal, an expression pedal, a mod wheel, whatever you'd like to take control during your live performances. And you can make adjustments to that or even connect a secondary controller within settings. Here in the MIDI settings tab of the app, I can designate a primary MIDI controller, and I can also connect a secondary MIDI controller if I'd like a Chord Nano Control 2 or something with some faders and knobs that I'd like to have tactile control on stage. You can also connect a Bluetooth MIDI device like a page turner or a foot switch, and you can even connect to network MIDI. So if you'd like to sync the Sunday Keys app with your computer running a network session in Ableton Live, you can do that. You can automate at a very deep level if that's something that's important to your workflows. So you can see that right now I have my SL Studio designated as my primary MIDI controller. You can tap the list and choose any other available devices. You can change the MIDI channel if you'd like. And I could also designate a secondary controller if I wanted to. This is where I could connect to a Bluetooth device, network MIDI, or a secondary controller like the Nano Control 2, or whatever else you'd like to utilize. Once you've got your controllers connected to the app, you can also make MIDI learn connections that let you connect a hardware fader or control to anything you see on screen in the main UI. To access MIDI learn, tap the settings menu, and then go to MIDI learn. Now we see a representation of the main screen here, and everything you see on screen can be connected via MIDI learn. So there's some default connections, like the mod wheel and your sustain pedal are automatically going to pass through. But if we wanted to, we could also control this fader. So I'm going to move this stick up and down, and now that's going to control fader 1 for me. When you're done, just tap done. And now as I move this physical control, you can see the on-screen fader is responding. So you can do as much or as little MIDI learning as you want. A lot of users find that the touchscreen does everything they want it to do, and it's great because what you see visually matches what you're going to hear. But if you're somebody that wants something a little bit more tactile, you can very easily get specific with the faders, buttons, and knobs that you'd like to use with Sunday Keys. If you have multiple hardware configurations, you can also save specific MIDI learn schemes. So once you've got everything dialed in, you can go to presets and create one. So I might have a setup for at home with one particular set of MIDI hardware. And then I could also set a different preset for church. And then recalling these is as simple as going to presets, choosing a preset, and hitting apply. So you don't have to spend time every time you get to a place that you've been before relearning all of your MIDI connections. Just save them as a preset and recall them and be ready to play. Now, how you sound when you're playing on stage is very important, but making sure your rig is reliable is just as important. The Sunday Keys app has been built and designed from the ground up for reliable performance when it counts on stage. You also have very specific control over your audio and CPU preferences, so you can dial in the right buffer size for you and also optimize specific CPU settings. If you're on an older iPad, you're still going to be able to dial in rock-solid performance on stage. Now let's dive into the way that you can use audio and MIDI effects inside of Sunday Keys to take total control over your sound. I've got 3 sounds loaded into a patch here: a piano, this big trance pad, and again, the simple worship ARP. But I'm going to demonstrate with one sound at a time how these effects can really help dial in your sound. So let's start off with this piano. And right now, the only effect active is this pure verb. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. This is the 100% dry piano sound. We can open up sound settings and get a little bit more specific here. Let's say that we really want to squash this piano. So I'm going to bring the threshold for this compressor down, and the ratio way up. So this is a pretty aggressive sort of compression setting that we might use on a smashed piano. We can hear that tail sort of bloom as that compression squeezes. We'll bring this back down a bit. Of course, we could use EQ. If we wanted this to be sort of a muted piano sound, we could bring down this low-pass filter. And we could thin it out here with this high-pass filter. And then if there's any specific frequencies that you want to accent or diminish, we could use these middle bands here to dial that in. We could also go into settings, and we could transpose the entire sound. And we can even adjust the volume fader range. So if we know that we want to be able to grab that fader without having to think about it too much, and we never want the sound to get all the way quiet, we just want it a little bit quieter, we could bring this range up to maybe there. And now this range is just going to go from -6 up to 0. And of course, we could set a cap below 0 if we wanted to as well. So that's all available inside of Sound Settings. Next up, let's add a MIDI effect here. I'm going to turn on the octave up effect. This lets your original note pass through and also adds an octave above it. And you can designate the velocity of that higher note with this blend control. It's a great way to make any piano a lead piano sound so that it cuts through the mix. Let's bring in this chorus effect and hear how that sounds. We could open that up and make some adjustments if we wanted, or we could load any of these presets. Let's bring in this one. We can make it more intense by adjusting the depth. Or make it more warbly by increasing the frequency. Now it's sort of this drippy, liquid chorus sound. And we could recall the default if we wanted to just kind of go back to where we started. One other thing I'll note here is while you're inside of an effect making changes, those changes are temporary until you confirm or discard them. So when you open up an audio effect, you can feel free to explore, try something, and if you like it, hit confirm. If you want to go back to where you were before you open the effect, just hit discard. I already showed you the delay effect in brief, but let's explore this a little bit more. So here we have delay subdivision. You can turn ping pong mode on or off. When it's on, the delays will bounce back and forth from left to right in the stereo field. When ping pong is off, the repeats will be right in the center. You could bring the filter down if you want to decrease the tone or the brightness of the repeats only. And we can bring this feedback up if we'd like the tails to last longer. And you can even get that feedback all the way up and the delay will self-oscillate. Let's replace this effect with something else. How about the tremolo effect? There's two different modes for tremolo, stereo or mono. When it's in mono, the sound is just going to fade in and out over time. And you can sync that up to the tempo and set the subdivision here. Or if you'd like to just set a specific frequency in hertz, you can do so. You can adjust how intense the effect is with the depth control. So if you want just a really subtle effect, you can bring the depth down, or at 100% the effect is going to be very prominent. If we go to stereo, instead of the volume fading in and out, it's going to fade left and right. And of course, there's some presets here if you want inspiration as well. Now let's talk about some effects you might use to dial in a pad sound. I've got this big trans pad with all the effects off. Let's open up Sound Settings. Here in the Attack, Decay, Sustain, Release tab, you can voice the way the pad fades in and out over time. so it matches perfectly with what you plan to play. So with the attack at 0, the sound happens immediately. If we bring the attack back, then the sound fades in slowly over time. Release is the exact same thing, but at the tail of the sound. So it stops immediately, or we can have it slur and fade in as we're changing chords. And the decay and sustain controls work together to determine how loud the sound will be as it is sustained over time. ADSR control is really important to be able to dial in the right sound and feel for your pads and synth sounds, and you have total control inside of Sunday Keys. We already talked about the mod filter tab, which controls how much the mod wheel adjusts the brightness of this sound. Of course, you have compression and EQ, so if we wanted this sound to never really get that bright, we can bring this frequency down. Just make it sort of a dark, warm pad. Oftentimes, one of the biggest problem areas with pad and synth sounds is this sort of low-mid mud that can build up. So we could use any of these bands here to cut out problematic frequencies so we don't take up too much space or get boomy in the mix. And then lastly, of course, we have settings where we can adjust the transpose of the sound, the volume, and how the volume fader affects the sound overall. We could even pan the sound left or right if we wanted to leave some space in the center for that piano sound. Now let's talk about some effects. First off, let's turn this chorus effect on. Let's try this pad chorus 1 effect. This is really adding sort of a unison detune effect to the pad. Here's how it sounds with it off and with it on. Tremolo can also be really useful for pad sounds. I'm going to open this effect up, turn it on. One of my favorite presets here is Pad Auto Pan. This is a stereo tremolo effect, so the pad is going to move back and forth from left to right. Now, of course, one of the most common effects used for a pad sound is reverb. And we have 2 different reverb effects available inside of Sunday Keys. You have the space verb effect, which can get really big and lush. And we can modulate the reverb signal if we'd like. And then we also have pure verb, where you have adjustable room size. So we could choose to place this sound inside of a large hall. We would make that really bright if we wanted to, or really dark. And we can also modulate the reverb sound here. I think I already showed you this cathedral reverb size. It's a great booming cathedral sound for pads. Now, while we're here working with this pad, I want to show you one of the other MIDI effects that I haven't talked about yet. It's called Easy Chord. I'm going to tap the octave up effect, choose Replace Effect, and then select Easy Chord. Easy Chord allows you to program input notes that will trigger multiple output notes. So you can play a single note on your keyboard and hear a full chord as the result. So you can do this manually if you'd like, if you have specific chords that you know you need to trigger and you'd like them on specific input notes. So I'll show you how this works. We just tap the input. We're going to say C1. And now play the chord that you want. So let's just play a nice C chord. And now when I play C1 with the effect on, I hear this big full chord. So we could repeat this process for up to 8 chords and program the exact easy chord settings that we'd like. But there's also a couple presets available. Let's choose simple pad chords. So now in the key of C, I've got C1 through B1, all triggering chords voiced specifically for worship music. And you could use this to free up your right hand to be able to play a lead part or a piano part and still have full pad chords underneath. And of course, you could turn this on or off. So if you want to have the pad freely playable for most of a song, and then turn on easy chord when you need to play a piano lead in the right hand. You're holding down the chord with that left hand, but it's not trying to keep up with the piano lead that you're playing in your right. It's a really powerful performance tool, and it's easy to prepare these chords when you're at home. Now let's talk about rhythmic sounds. I've got this simple worship arp that I showed you a little while ago. Again, it sounds like this. And we've got this arpeggiator pattern in here. Let's just show you a couple different arpeggiator presets. Here's a really cool one. This is a random mode, so it takes your notes, randomizes them, and outputs them. So we've got this arpeggiator active, and we could really drastically change how it sounds by adding a specific audio effect. First, let's just turn on this flanger. Really drastically changes the sound right away. We could swap this out with a chorus effect if we wanted to. Pull in one of these presets as well. Let's do lo-fi warble and hear how that sounds. Sounds cool. So now that we've got this chorus effect, let's open up the delay and increase the feedback. We could bring down the prominence of this chorus effect if we wanted it to be a little bit more subtle, and then we could open up the EQ and dial in even more specific tone preferences. So maybe we don't want it to be quite as bright. And I'm also noticing a little bit of low-mid buildup that I want to get rid of. So I could bring this down here to the low mids and cut that a little bit and take out some of the low end. So with audio and MIDI effects, this sound ended up being completely different from where we started. And of course, we could save this as a unique version to our library if we wanted to be able to use it in the future. But we could also swap out this arpeggiator MIDI effect for a sequencer. So let's do that now. Now we have a blank sequencer. You program sequences just like you program an easy chord. Play the input note and then play the output notes that you'd like it to trigger. I'm just going to go up the scale, and here's how that sounds. You can adjust the subdivision, the velocity, and the number of steps inside of your sequencer pattern. And of course, there's presets available to you if you're not sure what you'd like and you're just seeking some inspiration. Some of my favorite sequences inside of the app are simple repetitions of melodic ideas that sit in the background and add a little bit of extra polish and production value to your layered patches. So if we bring all three of these sounds we've been working on into the mix, we've got our piano on top, pad underneath, and then that really cool sequence we just programmed right at the bottom. Sunday Keys is designed with worship keys players and worship leaders in mind. Everything is optimized around the experience of preparing for worship at home and then playing at church to serve your congregation. We think the Sunday Keys app has all of the tools you need to sound amazing, to prepare quickly, and to perform with confidence. There's a link in the description to learn all about Sunday Keys and try it out for yourself. If you have a question this video didn't answer, leave a comment and we'd be happy to talk to you there. Thanks for watching.